It's a lovely little hymn. Today's service topic, reproductive rights, was suggested by Susan Okun, and I was glad to take it on. 2 years ago, when the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision concluded that the Constitution does not guarantee the right to abortion or to privacy in this most private sphere of our personal lives, I was horrified, angry, and disgusted. With a stroke, the court took away rights to reproductive freedom and access to care that I and most Americans have relied on for 50 years. Rights I had assumed my children would have too, and that I strongly believe everyone should have. In the past 2 years, we have watched as state after state has imposed draconian laws so that today 14 states completely ban abortion and 26 states ban it after a specific point in pregnancy, typically between 6 and 15 weeks. And 6 weeks is before most women know that they're pregnant. There are also burdensome requirements like needing to wait at least 24 hours between receiving pregnancy counseling and the actual procedure, bans on telehealth and receiving abortion pills by mail, no insurance or state Medicaid coverage, and shutting down facilities that provide abortions in addition to other essential reproductive health care services. I feel lucky that my children live in California, where such restrictions don't exist, and where health insurance covers reproductive care, including abortions. And I will say for most people, more on that. My kids also benefit from being white, educated, and having access to health insurance, financial resources, and the ability to obtain care where they live. This is not the case for millions of Americans. The restrictions on reproductive care are especially burdensome for people who already bear the burdens of being poor, being people of color, being unable to take time off of work, or lack transportation or childcare for their existing children, and so many other reasons. Poverty and race, of course, also result in poorer health outcomes in general. The CDC reported last month that Black women are 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related complications than white women. 3 more times. Multiple factors contribute to these disparities, such as variations in quality health care, underlying chronic conditions, structural racism, and implicit bias. And according to another article published through the Tuskegee University, the World Health Organization defines reproductive health as the state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence or disease or infirmity in all matters relating to the reproductive system and to its function and processes. Reproductive justice is different. It is defined as the complete physical, mental, spiritual, political, social, and economic well-being of women and girls based on the full achievement and protection of women's human rights. This last definition takes into account the realities of women of color as it relates to sexual and reproductive health issues. So, reproductive justice takes another step towards full inclusion in basic human rights for all. Our UU principles affirm the inherent worth and dignity of all people and equity for all. Our faith calls us to demand reproductive justice, to remove the inequalities, the inequities in sexual and reproductive health issues for people with marginalized identities, so that all people receive equal access to health care and all are able to make their own decisions about whether or whether not to be pregnant. Anything less is unacceptable. And now I invite Susan to come up and read a poem that reflects on that topic.
Thank you. I have to get myself, I'm so short, and then I have to have the glasses, and I have to have the notes. And I have a soft voice, but I want to be heard. This reading is by Megan Spencer. It's a poem. Let me tell you about Megan. She is a Black feminist artist, scholar, and mother, a PhD student at UC Santa Barbara, where she studies how Black women's visual art and literature show us connections between ecological crises and various forms of racial, sexual, and state violence. This poem was written for her daughter. It reflects on her experience of her daughter's birth and the process of coming to understand her precarious entrance to the world as part of a pattern of Black women's disproportionate vulnerability to preterm labor and birth. Spencer believes that poetry is part of a Black feminist tradition of moving between thought and feeling, and has been a necessary aspect of healing from birth trauma. On Mother's Day, our first together. One morning in December, under the newborn moon, I am split open. In the operating room, a scalpel cuts a smile across my rounding belly. I come apart to make a way for you. I am flesh, then vessel, then canal, then empty. And just like that, we are two. Red, wet, and swollen-faced, you enter the world beneath glaring white light. Dark curls, slick and sticky like a baby bird. Soft bones, ears folded shut. You too are there in this room where everyone has a job to do. When you came, your lungs were still readying, and I needed more time to teach you how to breathe in this sharp, demanding world. I am trying to convince you to stay. How to make you choose this unforgiving place that snatches up anything loved by Black girls, especially Black girls themselves. I am afraid of everything. You are smaller than anything I have ever loved or held, barely a papaya in my open hands. Will you swim in the ocean one day? Will you eat salted tomato sandwiches in August? Obsess about the way light moves through water? Will I have time to read you Lucille Clifton? There is language and color here, I promise. If you wait, there is more than these tangled and infinite wires and this constant threat of rupture. There is a sky out there. I pray your tiny feet grow roots into this terrifying earth and not the moonless black night dusted with stars.
Take a moment to breathe together. And let us take time to let those words sink in as we rise in body or spirit to sing hymn 1007. There's a river flowing in my soul. Please be seated. And we will pause till I find out where I am. There we go. Oh, yes. That's where I am.
Oops. Is that what it is? Okay. I see what you mean. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Our final reading today is by Jessica Valente, a feminist author and columnist. She writes a daily newsletter called Abortion Every Day about abortion laws after the Dobbs decision, which overturned Roe v. Wade and returned laws about abortion to the states. On May 4th, 2022, after the leak about the coming overturn of Roe, Valente wrote this, and this is an excerpt. She has a strong voice. We're getting our abortions whether you like it or not. I refuse to explain over and over again that women are people. I'm done degrading myself by sharing the most intimate details of my life with strangers in the hope that perhaps one will muster a spark of empathy. Why should we beg for scraps of humanity from those who will never give it to us? Part of the reason we're in this colossal mess is that Democrats ceded our most valuable asset, the moral high ground. Instead of hammering home that we are right and anti-abortion legislators are horrifically, dangerously wrong, they let conservatives call themselves the party of life. They spoke in whispers and favored choice over abortion. Instead of listening to years of advice of reproductive justice activists to support abortion unapologetically. They held onto the mantra that abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. Lending credence to Republicans' claim that there's something wrong with ending a pregnancy. There isn't. Abortion is a human right and a moral good, and I'm done feeling humiliated. No more bad faith debating, no more explaining basic medical facts or pinning our hopes on politicians. Right now, my only priority is making sure that anyone who needs abortion can get one safely. And after years of doing this work, the one thing I do have faith in is that a nation full of furious feminists can make that happen.
Go, Jessica. I gave you a quote without F-bombs in it, which is more likely for her. Yes, Mary Lou? Or granddaughter-in-law, right? Yeah. Yeah, that is absolutely true, yeah. So, just pretty great. She is, I recommend her writing, I really do. There's such strength in it and such courage of conviction. You know, I was one of those Democrats who bought the safe, legal, and rare thing, you know, I did. And boy, after listening to her and reading her works, I've come to realize the error of my ways and my thought process. And this last 2 years, it's just been kind of a horror show. And so I've learned a lot from her. I love, you know, and over the last 2 years, she has really spent a lot of time highlighting the many cases of women being forced to carry doomed pregnancies to term, being told they would have to wait until they were basically dying to get an abortion, right? Or needing to endure long journeys and financial hardships in order to obtain care. But also, as that reading suggests, women should never have to justify their reproductive choices to anyone. But rather, they should be able to make the best decision for them, taking into consideration their unique circumstances. My colleague Julia Hamilton writes, "Abortion is not just a deeply personal choice and a fundamental right, but it can also be a blessing. It is a life-saving medical procedure. It is a choice that can help heal from violence. It is a doorway to a different life. It is a blessing to so many people who, for whatever reason, are not in a position to have a child." I was thinking of another benefit that my children enjoy. They have a community where their voice or their choice is honored, and the stigma of abortion is minimal. They benefited from OWL, from Our Whole Lives, which is the sexual education program that the Unitarian Universalist Association offers, and which has been offered here. And it's age-appropriate education for people from like kindergarten into adulthood. My kids were in OWL when they were in high school. It provides really frank and honest discussion, and it's based on the very strong UU belief that all bodies are sacred. All bodies are sacred. And it teaches children to respect and honor their own bodies and boundaries, and those of other people as well. It teaches that everyone is worthy of respect and that everyone's wishes should be honored. If only that level of respect for reproductive rights and privacy in general could be inserted into our Constitution. If only people could offer care instead of condemnation, acceptance instead of judgment in our private lives. I am encouraged, though, that in states where the right to abortion has been placed on the ballot, voters have approved access, just in case after case after case. I think there are a lot of strong, angry feminists out here, right? And who realize that we have to raise our voices. I'm also, today 10 states have a constitutional right to this essential form of care, and I'm hopeful that more will follow. I'm grateful and proud to be part of a religion that holds the belief that all bodies are sacred. Women's bodies, people of color bodies, queer bodies, bodies with disabilities, all are sacred. And all should be free to use those abilities, their abilities to reason and discern what is best for their bodies or for the bodies in their care. The control being exerted over these bodies is a travesty. It reminds me that Julia Ward Howe's world was not so different than our own, with a few powerful players, mostly white men, wielding power over everyone else with impunity. Let us band together to advocate for justice for all bodies, whether through letter writing, showing up for protests, offering support to people in crisis, voting, encouraging others to vote, or perhaps talking about abortion every day or whenever you can. There's a lot that needs to be done here, even in California, where reproductive care is not evenly distributed, right? Access is not guaranteed. There's one thing that you can do that, that Linda just told me about today, and that's to voice support for AB 2099, which would increase the penalties for harassment and violation of privacy for patients and providers of reproductive health providers or at reproductive health centers. So, and there's more information about that here, and I'll put it on the back table. Together, we can help turn the tide and bring about justice for all. As Julia Hamilton says, we will fight shame with love. We will fight violence with compassion, and we will fight language of domination with songs of liberation and grace. And we know that we are not singing alone. I say amen to that. And now, we're going to sing together. We're going to sing a song that many of you have heard many times. It is You Don't Own Me. When Leslie Gore recorded this song, she was 17 years old. It was 1963. That was before Roe versus Wade, and the same year that the Equal Pay Act was signed. A lot has changed, and a lot hasn't since then. But women still have to say these words. And so if you'll rise in body or spirit, we're going to figure out how to get through this together.